Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us here on the Infinite Prosperity podcast. My name is Louisa Havers and I help high achievers, entrepreneurs and coaches lift the lid on life and business so that they can live at their highest value. Each episode we will bring you our favourite founders, CEOs and guest experts to share with you their insights and strategies to expand your wealth consciousness, your spiritual leadership and aligned business strategies. We know that living in alignment with your soul's mission is what fulfills you, and we are here to show you how to achieve this in an energetically aligned way. If you haven't already, be sure to claim your free abundance activation in the Akashic Records. Go to louisahavers.com/gift to unlock your abundance activation today. And if you'd like my support in having aligned success in life and business, then contact me at www.louisahavers.com and let's explore together if it's an aligned match. Get ready to live at your highest value and to expand into your next level of money as you elevate and receive more. You create more for others. Righty ho, let's dive into today's episode.
Welcome to the Infinite Prosperity podcast. We are chatting with award-winning business lawyer Suzanne Dibble about legal protections for your business and for your peace of mind. A huge welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, so excited for our conversation today. This is just going to be hugely valuable for everybody because I think it's one of those things that we don't really want to think about, but it's absolutely essential. And as a member of your Small Business Legal Academy, it's just been a huge resource for our company. So I'm really passionate about getting the word out there. How did it all start for you? How did you start your business? How long have you been in business?
Gosh, well, you want to go right back to the start. I went to a school where if you were good at science, you were going to be a doctor. And if you weren't good at science, you were going to be a lawyer. That's kind of the extent of the careers advice that we had at my school. And needless to say, I wasn't good at science. So I sort of was almost molded down that lawyer route without any sort of real decision making on my part. Not saying that I'm sad about that. I love, where I am today and the intellectual stimulation that it's given me and the flexibility that I've been able to have with my young family. But, there is still a little part of me that is a frustrated travel TV presenter. If I'd have known that career existed, then I'm just saying I might not be here in this capacity anyway. So yeah, I did the sort of traditional route to become a lawyer. I studied law at university. I went to law school. I was fortunate enough to secure a training contract with one of the world's biggest law firms, who sponsored me through law school, which was quite handy. And I became a mergers and acquisitions lawyer in the city, doing the kind of deals that you read about on the front page of the FT and the business sections of the papers. And it was great fun. But when I got to the age of wanting to settle down and have a family, I realised that being an M&A lawyer was not at all compatible with actually seeing said family. So I actually took a couple of positions in-house before I left employment altogether. I was headhunted to go and work at ITV because I'd done a deal with them when I was working at the law firm, and they liked what they saw and said, "Oh, can you?" They kind of poached me, I guess. And so I went and I was the lead lawyer on their £1 billion project for when we switched the TV signals from analog to digital. That was a £1 billion project for ITV, and I was the lead lawyer on that, which was great learning experience. And then I moved just after that. Well, I was headhunted again to go to be legal director of Hampton's Estate Agents, which at the time was owned by EMAR, which was the largest property company in the world. Quickly promoted to be operations director, which was great because I've always been a frustrated entrepreneur. I'm actually, don't tell anyone, but I am much more interested in the business side than the legal side. And so that was just great to have that first sort of real commercial grounding. Of course, you're getting that to an extent. Well, you're a commercial lawyer, when you're doing mergers and acquisitions and various other things, you know about the business. But I don't think there's any real it's a completely different matter when you're actually in the business and you are a board director and you're making those kind of strategic decisions. It's a very different situation. And I was actually on that board before I was 30. So it was a really great experience at an early age. And I've carried that through into my own business. I've been running my own successful legal business now for the last 13 years. and obviously helping all of my small business clients as well, with not just the legal side, but that real practical commercial experience as well. I think that's what sets me apart, is that I've had experience at, you know, the real top end of the spectrum with working on the £1 billion deals. I've also, you know, at the other end of the spectrum, set up my own small business and had suffered all of the trials and tribulations of actually setting it up from scratch, without any kind of funding or anything else. You know, I've really sort of bootstrapped my business. So I can really empathise with what small business owners are going through, and also, you know, guide them through legal issues and talk about legal protection in a way that is relevant and practical for them. Because I think a lot of lawyers just sit in their ivory tower, having never ran a small business or in any way been related to a small business, and they just tell you what the law says, which can be just totally, I'm not saying it's irrelevant because that's what the law says, but it's how do you actually apply that in practice? And that's what I'm really passionate about doing. And I'm so much more fulfilled working with the very small businesses. And when I say small, I mean, you know, from the solopreneurs, even hobby businesses, because obviously, even if you're doing things as a hobby, there's still a huge amount of legal risk, which a lot of people don't realise. You know, up to, I probably now act for businesses up to about £5 million turnover, so still quite small. But my sweet spot, really, the people that I love to help are that sort of sub £1 million turnover. In many cases, it's sub £100,000 turnover. The people who are really starting out, who I know from my, you know, experience of having worked with tens of thousands of small businesses over the years, the impact that just making one small mistake and not having the right contract in place, or sometimes it's even just a few words or one clause, you know, the impact that can have on not just their business, but on their livelihood, on their health, because let's face it, you know, legal issues are very stressful. There's been a survey that shows that 20% of all small business owners in the UK have suffered health-related issues due to the stress of legal matters, which if you extrapolate that from the survey results to all small businesses, it's something like 1.1 million people in the UK have suffered health issues because of legal issues. And because of my experience, I know that typically they could have been avoided, you know, and that's what I'm really, really passionate about, is helping small business owners to be proactive, to understand the risks, to put protections in place so that the worst doesn't happen. And if there are a few things that come out of left field, they've got a support from me in a very affordable way to be able to, you know, deal with those problems quickly and efficiently and without having to waste a lot of money on it.
It's incredible. I think you, like you said, you have got this sweet spot where you're able, with all your background and expertise, to be able to translate what can feel like it's gobbledygook for so many people when we haven't lived that legal world. But you've got the benefit of, you know, both being a business owner and all that, being a lawyer. And it's shocking, those statistics, isn't it, around that impact on health. I'm sure it's probably higher because it's just what's measured and extrapolated out, isn't it? And there'll be people that have not reported X, Y, and Z, and the impact.
I know from my experience. I know from my experience of just the number of phone calls that I get, that's probably in the right benchmark. Okay. You know, I've had many people in tears on the phone saying, one lady was saying, Suzanne, I've got an associate who's literally just gone and poached half of my client base. I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills next month. What can I do about it? And I said, well, show me a contract. And she said, there isn't a contract. What can I do? And I said, well, in that case, nothing. You know, and another lady, she had spent a fortune on a new name for a program and had an event all branded out with it. She had a cease and desist letter served on her 48 hours before the event, and it was, as she admitted, you know, probably one of the most stressful times of her life, because she didn't know whether to pull that event, and she had a number of people come in from not just this country but other countries as well. Did she pull the event? She didn't have time to rebrand it all in that time period. You know, she didn't know what to do, and that's my frustration, because in that instance, if she'd have just done a couple of simple searches, she wouldn't have been in that predicament. Yeah. You know, it would have taken, if she'd have had the right knowledge, it would have taken her literally 10 minutes and she wouldn't have had to have paid anything. But as it happens, I helped to get a negotiated settlement, and it was very costly and very problematic. So yeah, it is. That's what drives me. Those kind of phone calls and those kind of statistics is what drives me to do. We do a lot of free education as well as our paid offerings. And that's why, because I feel that no small business owner should be priced out of legal protection, just because they are a small business owner, because they're a solopreneur or a micro business, etc. There needs to be affordable options for people to be able to go to.
It's huge, isn't it? Because it's the impact not only on the business owner, but the whole family members as well, as they're kind of impacted by what's going on in those businesses. It's the bits that people don't want to think about in terms of the rose-colored glasses that we can think that we've got, because we think,
all,
oh well.
Yeah, we all do it. We've all have an optimism bias and think, oh, that's not going to happen to me. Yeah, we've all been there.
And that piece, as growing our businesses, and one of the things I always think when I'm talking with clients is that if there's a problem lurking when you grow your business, the problem's just going to get bigger. You're growing the problem rather than kind of like, let's get those foundational pieces in place for whichever stage of business that you're growing, because there's going to be different requirements at different stages. And of course, we talk about prosperity on this podcast, and I just think that that legal foundation is so key. Before we dive into what's critical to have prosperity, I'd love to know what does prosperity mean to you? Because I found it means different things to different people, so I'm really curious what it means for you.
Yeah, it's interesting that A, you say that, and B, I'm on this podcast, because one of the drivers for me is really about prosperity. It's to give financial security and ultimately, hopefully, financial independence, particularly to women. I saw my mother, at the age of 50, my dad walked out. She'd given up her career for me. And she did not have that financial security, and I saw the rug really pulled from under her feet and what that did to her. And at that moment, I determined that as a woman, I wouldn't let that happen to me. I would have my own career, whatever that took, and I would always have my own financial independence, certainly from my husband. And I am now well on the path to being truly financially free, I suppose you might call it. And that's what I want for other women, particularly those who felt that they've needed to leave corporates, like I did, to work flexibly around the family, etc. That's really, again, what drives me. But what it means for me is just that. Prosperity to me is, well, in a financial sense, it is really choosing to live the life that I want to lead, without being beholden to somebody else. Freedom is one of my highest values, so I think there has to be an element of freedom in the definition of prosperity as well. For me, it's, for me, certainly not about stacking up lots of money in the bank, that's for sure. It is about, yes, of course, being sensible with spending habits and investing in the right things and putting money away for a rainy day, etc. But it is also about enjoying life and living a real prosperous life. Having a business that supports those goals, having a business that brings you joy, I think is part of that. I mean, I'm interested to know from you, actually, Louisa, what would you say is the difference between prosperity and abundance? Because I think I get the two concepts probably confused in my head, and I'm probably talking a lot here about how I would also describe abundance. But what's your take on that?
It's a really good point, and I think many people do that, because for me, prosperity is around thriving, and it feels more tangible than abundance. And it's one of those things where it's almost like abundance and manifestation are two terms that are just used so often. It's almost, I can't think of what the word is. They've almost lost their definition, the weight of the word. Whereas prosperity for me feels like it's got more tangible outcomes, and it's not just about prosperity, like you've said, actually, not just about prosperity in terms of, let's say, a wealth of a business. It's all inclusive around, I talk about in my world, the prosperity codes around being around, love, health, and wealth, the trifecta. And when we've got the balance across those three, we truly do have that prosperity and that feeling of thriving and that freedom. Freedom's one of my values as well, because I think, having pressed escape on corporate too, it's like, I just want to have people, I think entrepreneurs want to have freedom and peace of mind. I think those are the two kind of key drivers for people around wanting to create prosperous businesses and to have that feeling of thriving.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. What would you say then is, in terms of, thinking about prosperity and the businesses that we want to create, and to be able to have all those aspects within that, so that we're not stressed out of our heads running our businesses. why is legal protection really critical for this piece around prosperity?
Yeah, well, I mean, the statistics aren't that great, are they, for people starting businesses? I think it's the majority fail within the first 3 years, and I think the stats are actually higher than that. A number of those reasons will be, I mean, some of them, yes, just had a bad idea and they shouldn't have done it in the first place, but a lot of them will be that they didn't have the right contracts in place, that they didn't protect their IP properly, and somebody else came along and they had to change their name and lost an amount of their goodwill. We had somebody actually who, again, she was in tears when she relayed the story. She sold a program, quite a high value program, didn't have the right contract in place in terms of spelling out what she was actually going to be providing. And because people make assumptions about what a program is going to be like, even though she was delivering what she told them on the phone she was delivering, they weren't happy with that. They thought it would be more than that. They got to, there was one particular rabble rouser, got a group together. He had a lawyer in the States. And as we know, people from the States are much more litigious generally anyway. And all of a sudden she was faced with a refund request for about £36,000, which she did not have the money to refund. So she was on the phone saying, I'm going to have to declare myself bankrupt. I've got no other option. Anyway, I talked her through it and we managed to get her out of that. But I mean, obviously there is the obvious effect on prosperity there, in that if you have to declare yourself bankrupt, that is a one of the worst I think things that people have to go through. But also, like you said, your trifecta of health, finances and
wealth. Health, wealth, and love.
Health, wealth, and love. So that was also really impacting. I don't think she slept for like 3 nights until from having that request until sort of speaking to me. So that's just one example of how it can really, really impact on your prosperity, not just, and that's in a fairly short-term period, but on a longer-term period. If you're constantly firefighting because you haven't got the right protections in place, you're constantly having disputes with suppliers, clients, etc., that is going to take its toll on all of those things related to prosperity. You're going to waste an awful lot more money than if you'd have just taken a few moments up front and invested a little bit of time and effort in putting those legal foundations in place. Health-wise, it's going to be a lot more stressful to deal with that, those ongoing issues, than to invest a couple of days, 3 days, if you did it as a focused project, in putting those legal protections in place, etc. So both short-term and long-term effects on prosperity of just not having that solid foundation in place. And a lot of people think, I haven't got any legal issues. And they tend to think that legal issues is all about going to court. It's not. When I refer to a legal issue, it's really anything that's causing you any stress in your business, typically, other than the fact that you might have spent £10,000 on a chair and realized that you didn't have enough. That's just being stupid. But so many like stresses with clients are because people don't understand their rights. So they're giving away more than they need to, for example. So maybe they don't quite understand the laws around the cooling off period, and when they do and don't have to refund people. Maybe they don't have a contract in place, or it's not robust enough, so they're not getting paid by their clients. We're living in, let's face it, hard times at the moment. And if a client is struggling for cash flow and it's got 5 suppliers and the other 4 have all got good contracts and you haven't, then guess who's going to get paid last? If you haven't got robust termination clauses in your contract, well, guess whose contract is going to be terminated first if there's a choice as to, non-essential and essential contracts, etc. So it really does impact on almost every area of your business. And what I do I do a lot of free webinars. I think I did this one for your community, didn't I, actually?
You did.
The 7 fundamental legal protections, because with small business owners, they might think, oh gosh, I just don't know where to start. There's too much. I'm too overwhelmed. I'm just going to put my head in the sand and hope that nothing too bad happens. And that's not a winning strategy. And I think everybody probably knows that, but it's just easy to kind of kick the can down the road and defer it. And so I do this free webinar, and it is, from my experience of having worked with tens of thousands of small businesses, 7 fundamental areas that if you put those things in place, then you're going to be in like a 95% better and stronger position than if you hadn't. And there are things like, obviously, client contracts is key for many reasons. looking at your supplier contracts and the things that protections you should have and what you definitely shouldn't agree to, protecting your IP, getting a trademark so that you can grow and secure your brand. When you're taking on a team, the protections that you need to have there, credit control, protecting your content and knowing what to do if somebody steals your content, etc. So they're kind of the core areas that I see nearly every client stress or a stress in a business comes down to one of those 7 fundamental areas. So for anybody listening who's thinking, oh, it's just it's not. If you break it down and if you have somebody explain to you, look, this is what you need to think about. This is the simple step that you can take to put yourself in a 10 times better position. Then you've just got to do that, because otherwise it is such a vast area that if you're relying on yourself and Google searches, you're just going to get yourself entirely wrapped up in knots.
Yeah. And things change, don't they? I think that's one of the things that I really value from the academy that you offer, is that that it's going to be up to date, and you've got that guidance in there. And certainly, as one of the things that I do within my business as well is I do business coaching alongside the energy psychology stuff and the Akashic records, and with from the business perspective have been the things that clients have come to me around is what do I do? There's been a refund request, or someone hasn't used the product at all and now they're asking for a refund even though they bought it 3 years ago. Trademarking, that's just such a hot potato for people as well. And what's the most common one, would you say, that people find themselves in hot water with?
At the moment, with the current economic climate, it's all about getting paid or not getting paid and refund requests. I happily share my story about how I lost nearly £5,000 in the first sort of year or so of my business, and that did nearly put me out of business. Talking about prosperity, that would have certainly made me feel an awful lot less prosperous, and indeed would have, if I hadn't have been quite resourceful and had a number of other things to call on, would have led to me having to go back to my old job of working sort of 20 hours a day in a law firm and not seeing my family. So and have impacted on my health. So hence your whole triangle of trifecta prosperity would have collapsed. And that was really because I had the legal knowledge, obviously, but I didn't think it would happen. And that's, I think, what's great about my legal membership, is that it's not just about the theoretical. It's small business owners regularly discussing what's actually happening in their businesses right now. And getting solutions for them. And I always say it's better to learn from other people's mistakes than your own. Much easier and less costly and less stressful to learn from other people's mistakes. So yeah, what we're seeing at the moment is there's a lot of refund requests from people, like you say. Often it's many years down the line. Maybe it's because people haven't been specific enough about what they're providing. People are using it as an excuse to either get a refund or not to be paid. And I say that's probably the most common, followed by IP issues is probably another common one. Whether that is, so we have had a number of members where similar competitors have been using similar names, and that has been impacting on their business, because people have reached out to them and said, oh, I've seen so and so, are they in any way connected to you? And they're like, no, don't know who they are. But same or similar name, doing exactly the same thing, targeting exactly the same audience. Of course, there's going to be a risk of confusion in the marketplace. Happily, for one of them, she had just done my trademark course and had protected her name literally a month before this happened. So she came on to one of our legal surgeries as part of my membership and said, fortunately, I've got the trademark, but what do I do now? So I was able to direct her to a cease and desist letter. And because she had that trademark, which is a really, black and white monopoly on, if somebody else is using that in a competing field, you can't. And if you're taken to court, you're stupid if you continue to use it, because it's black and white and you would be ruled against and you would have to pay the legal fees and court fees of the other person. So happily, you know, I was able to guide her, and very quickly it was dealt with. That other person realised that they didn't have any argument, and changed the name. Other people have had a bit more problem because they haven't actually trademarked, so we've had to, you know, try and deal with it through passing off cease and desist letters and things like that. But yeah, I'd say in the main recently, it's been more around the payment side of things, to be expected in the current climate.
Yeah, there's always cycles with these things, aren't there? I think, oh, this is the one that we're going for at the moment. How can you help our listeners with their legal protection? Because I know you've got a whole range of things. I'd love to let them hear about it all, Suzanne.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity. So as I say, I do have I do a number of free trainings because I'm really passionate that, you know, every business should be able to educate themselves about the risks. And so if you follow me on Facebook or Instagram, I'm sure you'll get my ads or see we're always posting what we're up to on there. So I'm Suzanne at Suzanne Dibble on Instagram, or Suzanne Dibble, the small business law expert, on Facebook. And we have we've got a trademark one coming up, actually, depending on when people listen to this podcast, in January. But we do a trademark masterclass pretty regularly because we know that is a really, you know, a hot topic for our audience. But we've got one coming up in January 2024 that is a really in-depth week-long challenge, actually, for people who want to be able to know how to register their trademark themselves without, you know, spending a fortune on trademark attorneys and lawyers, etc. So I've got lots of free offerings. Then what we also have is my membership, which is where people have access to all of my legal templates. There's about 130 of them that I've built up over the past 13 years. Pretty much every template that I can think of that a small business owner would need. They also have access to all of my trainings, which are all fully searchable. So that stops that sort of mad Google scrambling at midnight when you've got, you know, maybe you've got a refund request, or I don't know, someone's sent you a cease and desist letter about using a name, or I don't know, someone's not paying their bill, or whatever's keeping you up at that time. Fully searchable trainings. We've got hundreds of trainings. We've got courses on, you know, most areas of like trademarking and copyright and building a team and GDPR. How could this be the first time I've mentioned GDPR with my with my award here?
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I've even knocked my microphone over. Yeah, I won this award recently. So this is the Picasso Europe Award for the best privacy writer, author, and that's my book, GDPR for Dummies.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So we've got courses on all of that, and it's, as I say, fully searchable, so that even if you are searching at midnight, you're going to get an answer at your fingertips. But then what we were able to add in the last few years is access to me, because I've always been really passionate that people still need, although templates are great and will get you a certain percent of the way there, if they're from a trusted source, obviously. Some of them are, you know, shockingly bad, and there's no regulation around who sells legal templates, believe it or not.
No way.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So as a solicitor, I am regulated to the nth degree, but there's no regulation of legal templates. And I think people just assume that you know, a qualified lawyer is you know, with tons of experience drafting them. Not always the case. So I really strongly believe that there had to be some kind of access to me, but you know, there's only so many hours in a day. So we've thought about it very carefully and structured it in a very it's a way that works, and it makes sure that all of our members get the opportunity to ask me an individual questions. We do it in the form of surgeries on like live surgeries on Zoom with pre-submitted questions. Everyone gets their question answered. But I think more importantly than that is what others learn, like I was saying before, what other members learn from the people who are asking the questions. Experience is priceless. And obviously my response to what they're going through. They learn so much more through those real life examples than reading a Google article or, you know, whatever else. So that's our main focus at the moment, is in growing the membership. We've got many hundreds of members in there at the moment. And it's I just love it because I can see the immediate benefit that they're getting. And they're actually able to move forwards, you know, quickly and confidently. And it just makes such a massive difference in their business life. The other thing that we do is we have a more in-depth program, which is where if you really haven't got anything in place, you know, maybe it's early day, well, you could be early days. I know some people who are 20 years into a business who have never even thought about legal protection. And they've just been absolutely incredibly lucky that well, maybe they've been firefighting all the time and they just think that's a normal part of business. Doesn't need to be.
No.
So the program really guides people through the 7 sort of core areas, but walks them literally through my templates and explains them step by step, and explains why certain clauses are there, how they need to negotiate them or might be asked to negotiate them, what they can agree to, what they can't, etc. This gives a really great overview of putting that legal protection in place, and but really understanding it and having that super solid foundation. So so they're the kind of 3. We've got the free, we've got the membership, and then we've got my program. That's kind of how I help people.
Yeah.
I occasionally do one-to-one consultancy, but because there's only one of me and there's only so many hours in a day, I limit that. So that's quite expensive.
Yeah, of course. That's great because people can then tap in where they're at in business. Yeah. That's huge. And I love your Instagram, by the way. I often what's Suzanne up to today? Go and have a look. It's hugely valuable as well. And I think as you were reflecting around the discussion around being able to share stories and people's different experiences, I think that's where it really becomes really relevant for people, because you can kind of go, oh, hang on a second. Suddenly the intangible sort of legal stuff that's happening over here is actually brought to life.
Exactly. It starts the alarm bells ringing. Yeah.
Of what's possible. So that's why I was like, well, I really want to get you on the podcast, because I think this is just such a hugely important conversation. And there's always something that we can do to improve those foundations for our businesses as we're growing. As we're kind of wrapping up, what would you say the 3 tips that you'd love entrepreneurs to take away from our conversation today?
Yes. Great question. I'm not sure. Can we really narrow it down to 3? Well, I'll have to for purposes of this podcast. I think, depending on where you are in your journey, but I think this equally applies at any stage in your entrepreneurial journey. I think one of the most important things is to really believe in yourself and your offering. And if you need to do work on limiting beliefs and all of that kind of stuff, like that's one of the first things that you really need to do. You need to have so much conviction about how you're helping people with your product or service that it is the easiest thing in the world to sell. I get carried away on my sales webinars because I am so convinced that everybody needs what I offer that I have absolutely no hang-ups about that whatsoever. And my assistant she jokes about getting a shepherd's crook for me to kind of whisk me off stage because I just continue going. I'm like, and this testimonial and that testimonial, because I truly am so passionate about it. And I think if you can really tap into that passion and believe that you are, if not the best person to help them, then the right person for that time for that person, so powerful. And it really drives you. When you're having a tough day, it really drives you because you're like, no, this is my calling. These are my people. These are the people that I really need to help. And it, as I say, it just keeps you going when you might hit some tough patches. So I think that is essential. The next top tip is look after your customers. Yes, look after yourself, of course, and you've got to get that health system in place and making sure that you really look after yourself as well as believing in yourself. But look after your customers, because that will pay off 100-fold if you really care about your customers, if you show that care, if you do an excellent job. Then before you even have to invest in marketing, they'll be telling everyone. We get so many clients through referrals, through word of mouth. That's entirely really how my business was formed. And that obviously also extends to the legal side and to really understanding the laws around what you need to do to look after your customers. So many small businesses don't understand the laws about consumer protection, for example, if you're selling to consumers. Even if you're not, I think there's a really good balance to be had between looking after your customers and knowing your rights and maintaining your boundaries. And I think that's a really important balance to get right. And I'd like to think, we are firm but fair. And I think that's the way that businesses should operate. You should know your rights. You should be, yes, of course, you should have empathy and compassion, but firm and fair, I think, is what's helped us to be thriving after this amount of time in our business. So tip 2, look after your customers, and that means making sure you're compliant. You've got all, like on the GDPR side, a lot of people, GDPR. really, it's all about looking after your customers. You know, it's making sure that you're telling them what you're going to be doing with their data. It's making sure that you're putting the right security in place so that they're not going to find that, you know, their email is on some black, what's it called, dark web, black, I was
Yes.
gonna say black website, no, dark website, and you're getting suddenly all of these distressing spam messages or whatever, you know. So it's, you know, if you put the customer at the heart of your enterprise, and a big element of that is the legal side, then you won't go wrong. And I think my third tip would obviously have to be get that legal protection in place, because it will just make the growing of your business so much easier. It really will. You know, if you've got great aspirations and you're looking to grow, take on employees, maybe franchise one day or license, etc. You know, the sooner that you can put these fundamental protections in place, you know, the better it's going to be. And even if you're not, to have these, you know, what I would call everyday foundational support will mean that you're not having to firefight every day, that you can, you know, approach your business in a much more relaxed, peaceful, more confident, stress-free way. As Brian Tracy says, who I'm a great, actually, it's not Brian Tracy. I've been talking about Brian Tracy a lot at the moment, and actually it's not him, it's Stephen R. Covey in his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He talks a lot about focusing on the important but not urgent. So the quadrant B activities, or quadrant 2, I think he describes it. Because as small business owners, where so many of us spend our time is in that quadrant 1, the firefighting corner. And it's not a great place to be. If we can redirect our energies so that we're in that quadrant 2, which is the important but not yet urgent, then we're going to have so much of an easier life. And legal protection falls firmly into that quadrant 2. So by carving out a little bit of time, a little bit of effort, maybe a little bit of investment into putting that long-term protection in place, you're saving yourself a whole load of heartache and stress as you grow your business.
Do you know what, that's so true? Because one of the things I notice as well with people is when we entrepreneurs is when they haven't got the things quite right, or perhaps they're not, you know, from a sales perspective, not quite, you know, 100% believing in their offer, they'll pull back on their visibility. And also if they have been burnt by perhaps a refund request, a trademark, something or other, previous business perhaps going bankrupt, whatever it may be, and they haven't quite got their ducks in a row legally, subconsciously they're going to hold themselves back. They might not know why. So it's just such a huge thing.
We find that all the time with our members, actually, particularly if they're either if they're starting up or they're transitioning to something new, and we find that they're holding back, and they don't, like you say, they don't realize why until we've helped them and they've got the terms in place, and they're like, this is it, I'm now ready to launch. Why didn't I realize this a year or so early? You know, it's the not knowing of what's out there, and not knowing that you've got that protection. Once you've had someone explain to you what you need to think about and you put it into place, suddenly it's changed your perspective entirely, and you feel much more confident to, like you say, put your offerings out there and go and conquer.
I love it. Yes, let's conquer the world. I love it. Where can people stay in touch with you, Suzanne? And I know you've got an incredible free gift. Do you want to share all those things so people can?
Yes, yeah, no, absolutely. So if people want to sort of directly get in touch, then feel free to email our support desk on support@suzannedibble.com. If you just want to follow me and see what I'm up to, and we share a lot of free content on my social media, then like I said, Instagram is @SuzanneDibble, and Facebook is at Suzanne Dibble, the small business law expert. They're my 2 main channels. I am on Twitter and LinkedIn as well, but can't remember what I'm called on either of those. I think I'm just Suzanne Dibble. Suzanne Dibble on LinkedIn. So my free gift for your listeners is my 44 vulnerabilities checklist. So if you go through that and you think, oh yes, I haven't got that in place, and oh yes, actually I didn't mean to do that, and oh yeah, so if it's a really good checklist, and maybe there's some that you thought, gosh, I didn't even know that I needed to think about that, but now I do. So it's just a really nice checklist of the types of issues that small business owners need to consider. So either if you don't know anything, it's a great starting point. Even if you've been running your business for many years and think that you're pretty cleared up on the legals, it's a really good aid memoir to go through, and to think, oh yeah, well that's changed now. Yeah, no, I need to think about that, etc. So I don't know what the link is. We forward it to you. So maybe can I just say it's in the show notes?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
absolutely. We'll pop the link in the show notes, and we email out to our list as well. So the link will be in the email if people are on our list as well. That's a phenomenal checklist, because it's that bit, isn't it, where you're like, oh, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
I think everyone needs to
I actually went
download
and did a workshop for businesses that are, at the larger end of my sort of target audience. And I did a whole day workshop for them. And I gave them a checklist as part of it. And I said, right, tell me how many marks I said, if it's an issue for you, put a mark by the side. And I was quite stunned actually at how many these were very established businesses, in multi-million pound turnovers. And I would say, at least every person had half of them that they, at least half were marked as must look into that, must do this, etc. So yes, it's a good checklist, let's put it that way. And that's not to say, I don't want to make people, because it is a large area. The last thing I want is for small business owners to feel overwhelmed, because then the temptation is to do nothing. But it's just a checklist. It's a starting point. If people didn't have anything in place, I'd say the absolutely most important thing is your client contract. That's always the place to start. And please don't be tempted to cobble it together yourself. So risky to do that, because, well, not least because it's likely to be an infringement of somebody else's intellectual property that could get you sued. It's not going to be right for your business, etc. Please don't do that. But it is the most important starting point. And the good news is that once it's done, then it stays in place and governs each and every transaction with your clients going forward. So again, it's an example of, a little bit of upfront effort reaps, huge rewards on an ongoing long-term basis.
Yeah. Oh, so much there. Thank you so much for your time and your wisdom.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been phenomenal. Thank you everyone for joining in our conversation. I know this has been hugely valuable. Really excited to hear everyone's reflections. Do let us know what your takeaways are. You can share with us on social media or email us, of course, as well. Until next time, sending you all lots of love. Thanks, Suzanne.
Thanks for listening to the Infinite Prosperity podcast. And if you like what you've heard and want to know more, please go to louisahavers.com. We just appreciate you so much. So thank you for listening and hanging out with us. If there's anything that we can do for you, you can email us at louisa@louisahavers.com. Let my team know if you have any ideas for shows that you'd love to hear or topics you want me to talk about. Really looking forward to hearing from you. All right, that is it for this week, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for today. Looking forward to connecting with you again. Until next time, namaste.